It's like your show. Next time when you come on my show, like I'll be the one responsible for.
All
Oh,
right.
Michael, what do you think?
Sounds good. All right, well, we did have this one about Jordan Peterson. So, what's Visa's deep take on Peterson? At a surface level, JBP focuses on life's suffering and people's potential for evil. VV focuses on good vibes and potential for good. Are these complementary components of a well-rounded personal philosophy or diametrically opposed views?
Right. So I think they're definitely complementary. It's like a yin yang thing where like the light is in the dark and the dark is in the light. And I was pretty late to Peterson. I never really got hugely into him. I think what the value that a lot of people seem to get out of Peterson, I think I got my fix from Alan Watts around like a
Mm,
few years before Peterson became like popular. And the difference between Watts and Peterson is pretty like they talk about some of the same things, but I would say I was studying a little bit of Peterson fairly recently. I went to watch like his lectures that people have said like his lectures are like the right kind of, if you want to get into his thinking and stuff, you should go to his lectures. And it's like a reintroduction to Jungian stuff, to
right.
and that sort of thing, and Christian ideas and myths and how to like that sort of thing. And I appreciate that, and it's something that Elliot House used to talk about a lot as well. And it's a familiar territory to me, and so I don't, because a lot of it is familiar to me. I think for guys who kind of, for anybody who, someone like Peterson is their first introduction to these ideas, like it's extra kind of
Mind blowing.
compelling.
Totally.
Yeah, and also the thing that Peterson does really well that the rest of the world doesn't do so well is that he very obviously cares. Like he has this, like, I mean, in the context of the lecture. So I'm not gonna address like his. Some people say, oh, he's transphobic or what. Like if when you go into the detail, it's like a bunch of stuff. It's messy, whatever. Like, but like let's just ignore that stuff and focus on the good that he's done, right? And what he does well is that he conveys a sense of concern for the well-being of the people he's lecturing to and his students. He cares about their lives, right?
Right.
And you can see, there's I was listening pretty recently, like he did an interview with someone very, very recently, like after he got into his coma and came out, and then like somebody was interviewing him, and it was like a gotcha kind of interview where they were kind of trying to make him look bad, and
Right.
he posted the audio of the entire interview. And like very early in the interview, there's this lady asking him, what's your experience been like? And he starts talking about all these people who come up to him on the streets and say, Mr. Peterson, you saved my life, blah blah blah. And he
Yeah.
starts crying. And I was like, holy shit, this guy is, like, that's so, the he's a sensitive guy, like, for like, just that's so far removed from the mainstream narrative of what Peterson is like, and in some sense his sensitivity. And I would say, very broadly, a lot of the tragedy of a lot of celebrities is that they people love them because they're sensitive, and
Yeah.
then the reward for being sensitive is
It's
you get
pain.
fucking, you know yeah. And I would say that the weakness of Peterson, and again, it's very easy for me to criticize someone else who is, such a public figure. And I've just been tweeting on my alt recently that, and I have like what, just under 30,000 followers, and I've been tweeting on one of my alts that being a public figure is so dangerous and agonizing. It's like lifting a lot of weight or driving really fast, because you're just receiving all these energy and feedback from other people. And Peterson deals with this like fucking 100,000 times, 100 or 1,000 times more than I do.
Yeah.
So very, very easy for me to say anything about Peterson and be like, he's not doing well, and like, fuck me, right? Like I have to so when if I ever reach a fraction of his scale of influence or whatever,
Mm.
then you can point out what I'm doing wrong.
Uh-huh.
But so with that caveat, like, and with love, right, with love for someone who's trying to help other people, right? That's kind of how I'm choosing to parse Peterson. I do detect that from watching his early lectures that he's an anxious and neurotic kind of guy. Like his personality, pretty deep down, is pretty anxious and neurotic. It's kind of
Yeah.
Batman-ish in a sense. He has read some things about the world. He has encountered some things about the world. So some people say he's like a scaremonger with regards to what he calls cultural Marxism. But when I was watching it, so it's like the question is, do you think he's being genuine or not? So if you think that he is creating this boogeyman just so that he can, strike down a straw man for the spectacle of it,
Right.
then that makes him look kind of bad. But if you really examine it, he was a professor, kind of quietly professing for
Hmm.
like a couple of decades before he became a public figure, right? And my sense is, I think he is genuinely scared and worried about what he perceives to be the threat to kind of civilization.
Right.
I think he's genuinely concerned that there are people in the world, and I have encountered such people, right? People who have become so abstracted from the concrete um, nature. So one of his riffs that I remember him saying is like, so there's a spectrum from order to chaos, right? And the good part of chaos is creativity, right? It's like that newness and tinkering and exploration and like new ideas, new whatever.
Yeah.
And the good side of order is, you have just the sewage system works, right?
Right.
The like things just work. You trust that the building's not going to fall on you. Like that's order. And like civilization is, generally speaking, like closer to order than chaos, right? Like humanity is this you could say that, so you could interpret a lot of arguments about kind of society as on the spectrum of order versus chaos. And a lot of people feel that, the patriarchy is order gone too far, and yeah, there's truth to that. There is a tyranny of when you have like abuse of power and things like that. But Peterson's anxiety seemed to be that people are kind of trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater and be like, abolish everything,
Right.
dethrone all authority, and then have like chaotic, like go straight to full on chaos.
Right.
And he does seem to have legitimate anxiety about that, and I would not dismiss that. I again, funny, right? If you think about it, some people would say that you shouldn't dismiss people's anxieties when you're talking about, people who are relatively less privileged, who are anxious about racism, anxious about sexism, anxious about abuse. Like those people's anxieties are, you can always describe an anxiety as overblown, because
Yeah.
it's always overblown until it's not, right? But like, when I guess because he's a, like a straight white man, he's like a it's easy to dismiss his anxieties as, oh, fuck that guy, what the fuck does he know, he's so rich, he's so whatever.
Right.
And I have always had some sympathy for anybody's anxieties. Like I try not to pick and choose. That said, so I've just kind of gone along trying to express his thing. I do think, like, so if I met Peterson for a beer for dinner, right?
Yeah.
I would try to make him laugh. I think that his neuroses and his anxieties, understandable where it comes from, and it's part of it is his personality, I think, and part
Mm.
of it is, it's one of the tragedies of being a public figure, that like what you fear kind of comes after you. um his sort of, my armchair analysis of what, like, his weak point, right, his Achilles heel,
Yeah.
is that he doesn't quite have a well-developed sense of humor, and
Huh.
so he can't laugh at himself, or at his, I mean, I tried to kind of test this hypothesis, and I went looking up for Peterson humor, Peterson jokes, Peterson laugh, like on YouTube.
Right.
And it's like, it's pretty weak. The guy's laughter is very, it's kind of thin. It's like,
Uh-huh.
like, if you see Peterson, he never quite goes into that
Yeah.
really. And Alan Watts is amazing at this. Alan Watts can laugh about despair and, like,
Hmm.
and Alan Watts describes, he says, laughter and anxiety are two sides of the same coin, and that,
Right.
I think he said religion or sacredness is transmuting anxiety into laughter. And I think Peterson struggles with that. And again, when I say struggles with that, it's like, maybe he would be great at it as a private individual, but like,
Extra
when you're a
pressures and
public
stuff.
individual at this scale, and like you just get bombarded with, like, people put the weight of the world on your shoulders, right? It's like, really,
Yeah.
people must be messaging him every day. My girlfriend left me, my dad's a fucker, and then like he feels that burden, and that
Yeah.
just amplifies the anxiety. And so, like, me telling Peterson, yo, you gotta chill out, dude, like, gotta learn to laugh at this shit, like, easy for me to see, right? But I do also honestly think that's kind of the missing thing. And I think part of the tragedy of being any kind of leader or any kind of public figure is that people will inherit your neuroses. People will
Mm.
kind of just in your messaging, right? So like you like in your casual ramblings and just when you're just talking out loud, your thoughts will go kind of where like around the things you're worried about and things and people will pick up on that, right? It's like how if you're a child and you sense that your parents are afraid of something, you kind of inherit that by
Yeah.
osmosis, even if you don't know exactly what it is that they're worried about. And there is that thing that happens with public figures as well. And
Mm.
so
Mm.
that is I mean, so again, I Peterson's probably not going to listen to this, right? But like
Right.
with I do wish him well. I see him as someone who's trying to be a public servant. In fact, if anybody thinks poorly of Peterson, I would say the real problem is not that Peterson is imperfect. The problem is that there's only one of him. You know, there should be thousands of people like Peterson who are stepping up to be, you know, the surrogate fathers and big brothers of the world that the world is lacking,
I mean,
right?
this is
And
partially
then
the
they can.
Batman thing, is how I read
Sorry,
it.
say again.
It's I read it as partially being the Batman thing, right? It's like the sort of like the tragedy of the lone hero is like not really having friends, and then they sort of become this weird, hardened piece of a thing they could have been like in a network. You know what I mean? Like could have had someone to like cover their back. You know?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's I wish there were more people with inhabiting Peterson's role
Mm.
with more variety in emotional expression. So Peterson wouldn't have to be, you know, everything to everyone if there was a wider range of people inhabiting that kind of role. And maybe there's some kind of like selection bias thing where surely those guys exist, but they're just not kind of at that scale. And you know, so I try to put my money where my mouth is.
Mm.
So I try to kind of play the counter melody and provide what I think, you know, Peterson. So it's easy for me to say, Peterson, you're providing A, B, and C, but you should also be providing D, E, and F. As a consumer, I'm disappointed. Like that's
Right.
always easy for a consumer. So I'm like, okay, Peterson's providing A, B, and C. I think D, E, and F should also be provided, and so I'm going to try and provide that. You know, and then
Totally.
hopefully we can all encourage more people to step up and help other people along.